What is going on, everybody? This is James Krasnerick, and I'm back for another tennis-related segment of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. Now, today's segment, I'm going to be breaking down the U.S. Open men's quarterfinals that were just decided on Labor Day, or should I say the fourth round was decided, that will tell us who will play in the quarterfinals. I'm going to be going from the top of the bracket to the bottom in discussing the four matches. So the first one I'm going to discuss is Novak Djokovic against Feliciano Lopez, followed by Jo-Wilfried Tsonga and Marin Cilic, then Stanislas Wawrinka and Kevin Anderson, and then Richard Gasquet versus Roger Federer. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get into this. Djokovic and Lopez is an interesting match because it's arguably the most one-sided rivalry next to Federer and Gasquet in this group of quarterfinals. I mean, I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but Djokovic right now has a comfortable 5-0 lead over Lopez in their career head-to-head record. And in the 5 meetings that they've had, Djokovic has only lost one set to Lopez. It was in Dubai in 2011. A lot of things have changed since then. I mean, Lopez right now, he's due to be 34 years old in September, actually just a couple of weeks away from now. And he is playing some of the best tennis of his career. He's serving well. He's hitting his forehand as big as I've ever seen him hit it. And he's returning very well, which is not something we're used to seeing out of Lopez. Now, as for Djokovic, there's little to really talk about. He's the best player in the world. He is hitting both groundies rock solid. His serve is getting better. His net game is getting better. And he's overall a better player than he was 3-4 years ago when he went on his serious tear. Now, talking about this matchup, I believe that Lopez has a chance to give Djokovic some trouble. If he does 3 things well, he's got to serve out of his mind. He's got to drop at least 30 aces on Djokovic to have a chance. But he's also got to be willing to come forward even in the face of Djokovic's superb passing shots. Because if it goes baseline to baseline, Djokovic is just going to take him out in straights. But he's also got to crank up his forehand. He cannot be afraid to go after his forehand, because if he is, that's going to cause some problems for him, because Djokovic is just going to move him around the baseline and just wear him down. Now, they haven't played for 3 years, so a lot of things have changed, but ultimately, the way this style of plays of these two players matches up, it doesn't favor Lopez at all. Because Djokovic is a great returner that can nullify the Lopez serve, which, although is big, it's not one of the biggest in today's game. It doesn't really compare well to a Raonic. It doesn't really compare well to other guys like Karlovic and Isner. It's not huge. It's still big, though. So Djokovic is going to be able to have some success returning. But Lopez's return, although it's gotten better over the years, Djokovic's serve, I think, is strong enough to kind of overtake it. So in that aspect, Djokovic just have the edge on the serve. And in my opinion, the return, Lopez is going to have some problems, especially if Djokovic is serving well. So ultimately, when I think about these two and they play against each other, I'm feeling Djokovic in 4 sets, because I think Lopez is playing well enough right now to take a set off Djokovic. And let's go back a few years, actually let's go back several years, to 2007, when Lopez played Federer in the 4th round of the Open. Federer was having one of his great years. He'd win 3 of the 4 majors that year, and Lopez took the first set off of Federer. Was playing some incredibly good tennis, and it took a Federer playing his best to put him away in 4. Now, do I think that could happen here? Yeah, I think that Djokovic actually will drop a set, but I think he will power through this match on his way to the U.S. Open semifinals. And the winner of this match, which I predict will be Djokovic, will take on the winner of the defending champion, Croatian Marin Cilic, and Frenchman Jo-Wilfried Tsonga. Now, this is an interesting rivalry because if you look at the 4 matchups in these quarterfinals, 2 of the rivalries, Wawrinka and Anderson, and then Tsonga and Cilic, both have the same tagline, 4-3, and then you got 2 ridiculously one-sided rivalries, Federer, Gasquet, and then you've got Lopez and Djokovic. But just talking about this match for a second, Cilic has looked like the defending U.S. Open champion at times in this tournament, and there are times where he's not looked very good at all. Like, in his first rounder, his opponent Pella pushed him to 2 tiebreaks, didn't really play that well. Kukushkin forced him to go to 5 sets, even though Cilic did win that 6-1 in the 5th. And Chardin in the previous round took a set off him too. Song, on the other hand, has played some really good tennis in this U.S. Open. He has not dropped a set, and I believe has actually not dropped serve as well, in defeating Jarko Nieminen, Marcel Granollers, Sergei Stakhovsky, who beat Federer at Wimbledon a few years ago, and fellow Frenchman Benoit Paire. Now, the head-to-head rivalry is 4-3 in favor of Cilic, and I think a good reason of that is because of the fact that Cilic's serve is a little bit more overwhelming, and since he's been working with former Wimbledon champion and the only other Croat to win a major, Goran Ivanisevic, who had one of the biggest lefty serves in the history of this game, Cilic has really ascended to new heights in the tennis court. His ranking is number 9, which is as good as it's ever been, and he's hitting some big serves lately. He's cranking them in the 130s, and he's getting his aces, and his double fault counts have been dropping. And if you look at last year, the run he had to the title, I mean, dismantling Berdych, Federer, and Nishikori in straight sets was as impressive a run as I've seen anybody have to a U.S. Open title in a while. But going on Tsonga's game style is a lot like Cilic's, but it seems to me he's a little bit more flair, a little more shot making, not quite as consistent, and I think moves a little bit better. So that could be problematic for Cilic in this match. Both players are going to have to serve ridiculously well because both players are very similar in how they go about their business. But if I were to go ahead and say who I think has the edge in this match, I'm going to go with Cilic. And the reason why I'm going with Cilic is this. Tsonga has played better lately, but to keep in mind, Cilic has won their last 3 meetings, has not dropped a set to Tsonga since 2011, and if you look at the way that Cilic has been serving, it's enough to overpower Tsonga's return, because I know Tsonga's a good returner, but I think Cilic's serve has a little bit too much juice on it, and Cilic has played progressively better as the tournament has gone along. Like if you look at the first match, I thought he played pretty poorly in the first match. I thought he played a little bit better in his second round match. Kukushkin was a Herculean effort on his part, and then Chardy was playing some good ball, but Cilic eventually had to raise his game. But in the key moments in this tournament, Cilic has raised his game. The last 2 matches he's won, the final 2 sets are both 6-1, so he's been able to raise his game and put his opponent away. I'm going with Cilic in this one, but I do not think it's going to be easy. I think that Cilic will pull it out, but I'm predicting he'll have to go 5 sets to do it because Tsonga is not going to give him an inch, and he wants to win just as badly. That French guy, he's got a lot of flair to his game, and I think Cilic is going to need 5 sets to take him out. So the way things are going, I predict that Cilic will take on Djokovic in the semifinals. Now for the other half of the draw, we have another rivalry 4-3, and that would be Kevin Anderson and Stanislas Wawrinka. Stan Wawrinka coming off his French Open Championship, in which he defeated Novak Djokovic in the final. And you've got Kevin Anderson, who's into the quarterfinals of a major for the first time, after taking out Andy Murray in 4 sets yesterday, as it is now, in a very impressive fashion. Now, the last time these two players played was actually this year. It was at Queen's Club on grass, and Kevin Anderson took out Stan Wawrinka in 2 tiebreaks. Stan was just fresh off of his victory at the French Open. Fatigue might have had something to do with it, but I'm not necessarily sure. If you look at the previous 4 matches that they've played that Kevin Anderson has won, 3 of them have been on hard court, and they've been close. You look at the 2 tiebreak one on grass I just mentioned in Queens. But last year in the Paris Indoor Tournament, Kevin Anderson had to go 7-6 in the third and come back from a set down to beat Wawrinka. Kevin Anderson again in Canada last year, 7-6, 7-5. That was a tough one. And then in Indian Wells, going 3 sets and pulling it out 6-1 in the third. Fresh off, Stan Wawrinka had just been off of winning his Australian Open. Now, these 2 players are pretty radically different because you've got Kevin Anderson, who's the 6'8" South African with a gigantic serve and a huge forehand. He's been getting better at moving throughout his career, and it's funny because he like American John Isner, were both prominent college players before turning pro, and Anderson's had a pretty, I wouldn't say stellar, but I'd say he's had a pretty admirable career to this point. I mean, if you look at what he's done as a tennis player, it is pretty impressive. to have won some of the matches he's won, and I will also go on record as to say that he's been probably one of the better of the really tall guys to come through. Like, to put it this way, of all the guys that have come through that were like ridiculously tall, Kevin Anderson's probably been the most consistent of them next to John Isner. So that's a pretty good feat. Now for Stan Wawrinka, again, he's shorter, he's under 6 foot, he's a big hitter off the baseline, a big serve, but his backhand is a thing of beauty, and he can crank it off the forehand just as well. Now the way that I see this playing out is that Stan Wawrinka is going to be able to do better than Murray from the baseline. Anderson benefited from the fact that Murray went into regressive mode and decided to just play defense for most of the match, and Kevin Anderson was able to push him around the court. He's not going to get that with Stan Wawrinka. Stan Wawrinka is going to stand on the baseline and move his ass around. Now, I know Kevin Anderson has won their previous 4 matches, but they were all best of 3. And if you look at who had the easier match the other day to win, Stan Wawrinka 4 sets over Donald Young, and it wasn't really that challenging. Then you had Kevin Anderson who had to go 4 sets at Murray, but there were 4 long, grueling sets, and all of the sets were at least an hour in length. So what does that tell you about what he's had to go through to get to this point? I am liking Stan Wawrinka in this match because I feel that the way that their styles match up, Kevin Anderson, if Stan Wawrinka decides to play defense and not offense, Kevin Anderson will take him out. Kevin Anderson will move him around, serve him off the court. He's going to have a huge serving day if he wants to win this match, which I believe that he can, but it's going to be hard to back that up after the monumental effort he went through just to beat Murray. I think Stan Wawrinka, who's had an easier path to get to this point, if you look at it, his first 4 matches, he's only dropped 1 set and then was to Donald Young, but he's been able to power through his opponents. Kevin Anderson, in the meantime, has spent a lot more time on court. He's dropped more sets, and he's had tougher opponents. I would say right now that Wawrinka has the edge. I think Kevin Anderson can definitely beat him. But I believe that Wawrinka will be able to move Kevin Anderson around, be able to hit through him with his forehand and his backhand. And I'm looking for Wawrinka to take this match in 4 sets. I believe it's going to take 4, but I think he will pull it out because of the fact that he is fresher, his groundies are bigger, and he's a better mover. And the winner of that match will take on the winner of Roger Federer and Richard Gasquet. Federer, very little introduction, the man who I hold up on a pedestal as the greatest tennis player of all time, against the very talented Richard Gasquet. Now, the last time these two guys played was in Dubai, and Federer was up 6-1 and Gasquet had to retire. So the last time they've really played a full match on a hard court was in the Miami Masters in 2014, and Federer beat him 1-2. It was not really that close. But Gasquet, I believe, is playing a lot better than he was back then. If you look at the 2 matches in which Gasquet has defeated Roger Federer, they were both third-set tiebreaks. Rome 2011 on clay, and then Monte Carlo 2005 on clay, over 10 years ago when Gasquet was just a 19-year-old young pup. I'm going to say this about Gasquet is that one-handed backhand is beautiful. That forehand is hideous. His serve is underrated for a guy his size. You wouldn't expect a serve that big out of a little guy. I mean, guys that are bigger than him, like Leighton Hewitt, have ridiculously weaker serves. I'm going to say Gasquet's got a very good shot at giving Federer some trouble in this match. But if you look at the head-to-head rivalry, other than those 2 matches, Federer's won the other 14. I mean, come on. Federer, I've watched him play every single match this tournament. I watched him play Leonardo Meyer, and he just mopped the floor with him. Steven Darcis, I mean, that was like target practice. Philip Kohlschreiber, I mean, it was during the day, and I will have to say that, yes, the stadium covering I thought was a little bit of a pain in the ass with the new roof they're putting in, but he still made it through Kohlschreiber. And then his match against John Isner on Labor Day, he was incandescent. In fact, I've not seen Federer return serve so well and deal with power the way that he did, arguably since the last time he and Roddick played a meaningful match, which would probably be the Wimbledon final in 2009. He is playing as good a tennis now as he was 6-7 years ago. 34 years old, going to be 35 next year, and he's just playing extremely well. Now, when these two players play, usually Federer's consistency from the baseline, his better serve, and his ability to return usually overwhelm Gasquet. And I'm not looking for anything really different to occur in this match because these two have met in a Grand Slam. 2006, they met in the first round of Wimbledon, and Federer, during the best year of his career, which he went 92-5, just blitzed him 3-2-2. They met in the semifinals of Wimbledon in 2007. Gasquet fresh off a 2-set-to-love comeback versus Andy Roddick, something I'm trying to forget about, and would lose to Federer 5-3 and 4. But in all honesty, Federer has had very little, other than the matches that Gasquet has beaten Federer, Federer has had very little trouble against Gasquet. And in reality, other than the Canadian Open Final in 2006, the Halle Tournament in 2006, Federer has not dropped a set in matches he's won against Gasquet, and they've been pretty straightforward. 2-5, 2-4, 3-2, 4-3, 1-2. Now I know that being in a best-of-5 format does change things, but I really don't think it changes things, and in fact gives Federer a bigger advantage because whereas Gasquet would only have to win 2 sets, he's got to win 3. And Federer, although he was pushed to 2 tiebreaks and 7-5 by Isner, he's clearly the fresher of the two players. Because Gasquet, this tournament, Gasquet has had to go the distance. Kokkinakis retired in the 5th set. Haase took a set off of him. And Berdych the other day took a set off of him too. So I will have to say right now that Gasquet is not the fresher of the two of them, and that Federer should definitely win this match. I believe Federer will win this, and even though Gasquet could give him some trouble, I don't see Gasquet taking a set off him. I think that Federer's just got too much game. I think that he's got too much ability at this point in his career, as he pretty much has always had. And although Gasquet is handling things better now than he ever did, I think Federer takes this match, and I think he takes it in straights. So my semifinal field setup will feature Djokovic against Cilic and Stan Wawrinka against Roger Federer in an all-Swiss battle. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I hope you guys enjoyed what I have to say. Take care and have a good one, everybody.